Okay, thank you so much everyone for being here. Welcome to Tune In, Drop Out, community-powered radio in the age of algorithmic playlists. Before we start, thank you to Debaser for having all of us here today. We're all seasoned experts in community radio, and we're excited to share our thoughts with you on this topic. And before we dive in today, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. So I would like to collectively take a moment to express gratitude for and solidarity with the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people whose unceded, surrendered land we are gathered on today to listen, learn, and play at this edition of Pique. As settlers on this stolen land acknowledgements act as a reminder to challenge the ongoing permutations of colonization and imperialism in our so-called Canadian society and commit to action in our communities and beyond. As many of you know, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is this coming Tuesday, September 30th, and there are many ways to participate in this day of memorial and reflection, including walking tours that are led by the Assembly of Seven Generations from the downtown core of Ottawa and the Beechwood Cemetery between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And likewise, 7 Ottawa Public Library branches will be hosting learning and action spaces where you can engage with interactive and educational activities that are centered on Indigenous knowledge and perspectives between 10 and 5 p.m. And you can learn more at biblioottawalibrary.ca. And finally, in the spirit of acknowledging the broader global context of decolonization and land back movements, as well as community radio, I wanted to encourage all of you to listen to Radio El Hara, broadcasting online from Bethlehem since its launch in 2020. Radio El Hara is a Palestinian community radio station that raises awareness around the civil and human rights issues that are facing Palestinians living under Israeli occupation. And its radio shows broadcast in solidarity with international movements for self-determination. A week from now, on October 4th, next Saturday, there will be an International Day of Action demonstration and march marking 2 years of genocide in Palestine at Parliament Hill at 2 p.m. Thank you. So, today's panel is about the perseverance of community radio as a radical form of music distribution and discovery and community building in an era defined by the ubiquity of algorithmically designed playlists. In her book Mood Machine, The Rise of Spotify and the Costs of the Perfect Playlist, New York-based author and editor Liz Pelly investigates how the exploitative practice of the globe's most popular streaming service, Spotify, has pulled the wool over our eyes, or rather our ears, promising to level the playing field for artists by minimizing the power of old-school gatekeepers like radio broadcasters such as ourselves. Spotify favors a system that has allegedly perfected a data-driven meritocracy where tracks that simply stream are supposedly rewarded. The catch here is that the perfect music curator, Spotify, is flooding playlists with royalty-free AI-generated music that is being advertised as if it was made by real artists, such as those surrounding me today. That, and of course, it's rebranding payola systems where major and indie labels alike can play to play at the very real cost of their clients receiving lesser royalties to appear on Spotify's coveted discovery playlists. While actively denying artists spots on editorial playlists that can make or break their careers, Spotify is fraying the practice of active, engaged listening in favor of profitability of passivity, producing playlists for every mood that don't really require a tuned-in ear, unlike community radio. Why pay the full price of royalties if listeners are only half listening? We didn't notice that the tracks were fake in the first place. So what do the artists, curators, and broadcasters actively subverting these practices have to say? Who and what is the system really benefiting? Let's find out on today's panel. I'm honored to be moderating this with a seasoned roundtable of subject matters who I will let introduce themselves. So I can start. My name is Zoë Argiropulos-Hunter. I'm a community radio broadcaster. I've been involved in community radio officially for 10 years, but the first time I was actually on community radio, I was only a few months old and I couldn't talk yet. But I've been hosting a show on CKCU-FM since 2016. And I'm also a community organizer. I promote shows under the name First Crush, which is the same name as my radio show, where I actively promote emerging artists within the Ottawa music scene and beyond. And I'm also the co-founder and managing editor of Also Cool magazine. We're an online music and arts publication based between here and Montreal. And much like the practices of community radio, our motto is community over clickbait. So we are a non-advertising based publication that aims to provide a platform to artists, whether emerging or established, in a way that provides equity for them to be able to share their voices in a way that matters most to them. So I guess we can go around, maybe XICADA, if you want to start.
Hi, my name is Elise Crivel. I make music under the name XICADA, and I am a co-founder of a pretty new online radio called Borscht, or Borscht.live. We're from Toronto, and right now we're mainly streaming tracks from local artists. I know everyone that's being streamed on there right now, and we're starting to do mixes as well. And yes, it's a very new project, and we're trying to figure out how to grow, but our focus is very much on local music and promoting local artists.
My name is Luigi, also known as City Fidelia. I'm a hip-hop and R&B artist, also a community builder and entrepreneur. I'm currently a program director at CHUO, a part owner at the roller skating rink Skate Play, and I also own a recording studio downtown called House of Lonesome.
My name is Rolly Pemberton. I make music as Cadence Weapon. I'm a rapper, producer, DJ. I was the former poet laureate of Edmonton, and I'm an author. I'm currently just finishing my next book, which comes out in May. It's called Ways of Listening, and it's actually really focused on this topic, so I'm happy to be here. And I've had different radio shows on TRP in Toronto, ISO Radio in Toronto, but I've also had mixes on NTS and Antennas and other stations like that.
Hi, my name is Jacob. I'm the co-station executive of Antennas Radio in Montreal, Quebec. We've been operating for going on 10 years, and I've been working there for going on 6. And I've also worked at CJLO, 1690 AM in Montreal. And long-time listener, first-time caller, I guess, of many radio stations. Big fan of CHUO and CKDT and CKCU and all the community radio stations in Canada. So really happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. And I should have mentioned this. I host my show on CKCU, but I have a show also on Antennas, and spent some time at CHUO also when I was at Ottawa U, so it's great to be in good company. Thanks, everyone. So I've decided to split the panel up today in 3 different categories. This is a huge topic, and we could probably be here for like 5 hours. But we'll start off with reciprocity. We're going to be talking about reciprocal connection to start off. So my first question for all of you, and feel free to jump in, is how does community radio challenge barriers to entry in the music industry?
Well, I would say for us personally, like there is no barrier to entry. Like we've had a lot of, kids just moving to Montreal for the first time and going, oh, I want to volunteer, I want to learn how to, DJ, or whatever it may be, and they just come and they figure it out as they go. They bring their laptop and don't really know what they're doing, and then, some people grow to be really big artists and become a big part of the scene, and I've seen that many times.
Yeah, I feel like the artists around the table, you could probably speak to that experience of how maybe it shaped your career in some way, if at all.
Yeah, definitely the importance of community radio has been big just throughout my career, and so something I always believed in too. My dad, Teddy Pemberton, he had a radio show in Edmonton called The Black Experience and Sound on CGSR for over 20 years, and for a lot of people in the hip-hop scene there, that was kind of the introduction to hip-hop music in Edmonton. So it's a place where different genres, different approaches can be heard before they're heard in the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback off that. It was pretty much the same for me because, especially in Ottawa, like I'll say, like I started around 2009, 2010. There wasn't that much outlets for hip hop and R&B, and it was community radio that provided, space for people in that industry to kind of like, showcase their music and also talk about like the inspiration behind the music. And now being on the other side, it's not only a place for people like to host or be on the boards, but especially like a lot of students at Ottawa U, because I'm at CHUO, it's a place for them to actually meet other people that have the same interests. And it's also a place where they learn about the city, because there's a lot of students that have no clue what's happening outside of campus. And once they join a community radio station, it's where they kind of get familiarized with like different events and all these things. So, yeah.
I'd say community radio is just so much more accessible. Like I'm pretty out of touch with mainstream music world, if it even exists anymore, I don't know. But I've been played on NTS a couple times, purely just from me being able to reach out to hosts, send them an email and say, send them my music and then play it. And I don't know that would exist in mainstream music. So it's just a lot more accessible for artists.
And what made you want to start your own radio station in Toronto?
Me and my co-founder, Dora, who plays music under Garden Magic, we both are musicians in Toronto, and we had this idea of starting a label, and the radio station, internet radio, came as well, and it just kind of came out of wanting to grow community, really, and yeah, just trying to build community, which is very much lacking, I find, in culture these days. So people seem really excited about that idea of building that potential. So
yeah, absolutely. And my next question on that idea that speaks to connective tissue and community, I was wondering if all of you could talk maybe a little bit more about your respective communities and the impact that community radio has had on nurturing creatives and industry professionals that you've met over the course of your years being involved with different stations.
I would say because like there's almost about like 20 languages on our station. So I think just having that available has allowed like different hosts to learn about different cultures on our station. And the other thing I would say is like being at CHUO also allowed space for people to know what community events that are happening in the city. And I think that would be the biggest thing in my experience at CHO.
I find whenever I move to a city, I want to know what the cool internet radio station is there, or like that. I feel like that's a really good signpost of what's the culture there, what's the community there. And I know when I first moved to Toronto, when I connected with the people at TRP, that was really exciting for me, and that made me feel like, oh, it's going to be okay living here. After I lived in Montreal before that, but yeah, TRP, and I felt the same way with ISO Radio, which is kind of now defunct, but it was started by JMKM and Frieza Chen. They've since moved to London, England, but I just was always amazed by how diverse the community was that they cultivated musically, culturally, and I feel like these kind of stations, I think, are really a great reflection of the community that they're based in.
I would say, specifically for us, it's kind of a reflection of like the community of the time, because in order for us to be existing, like Antennas is completely volunteer run, no one gets paid a dime. So I don't really see it happening outside of Montreal really as the community, because it was in 2016 so cheap to live there. So it was like very viable for people to volunteer and make the radio station on the side of working. and be paying, what, $600 for rent, max, maybe. It's a little different now, but it's changed in the way that, like, people are, like, yearning for that sense of community so much more now that it's just a little bit harder to live. Now that it's like 2016 was like pre-Nazi era of Canada, and now we're like, what even is going on? So, yeah.
Are you seeing the same thing in Toronto, Elise? Just in that you find like maybe people are more drawn to the platform that you're creating, trying to find something to tether themselves to other people to maybe get that, I guess, reciprocity, find that connection with others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people are definitely excited to even just like hear themselves being played is a thing, and like, I don't know, I'm noticing people like connecting with each other that are also being played, and I don't know, I do feel that there's like a community being built out of it, and yeah, and even just to speak to what Roldy was saying, I think that it would be so cool to me, and maybe I need to tap into this more of like, noticing what is coming out of specific cities. Like one thing that I'm really proud of with Borscht is that everyone being played right now is an artist in Toronto, so you can like really tap into what the sound is there. And yeah, I'm curious, like, and Antennas, are you playing a lot of like Montreal artists or?
Yeah, most of the people that have shows are Montreal-based. We've tried over the years to branch out. At one point, we did have like a second channel in Vancouver that got shut down because Vancouver's crazy expensive to operate out of. But yeah, for the most part, it's like probably 90% Montreal-based people. But yeah, we do have some people from France and the US, and I think we even have one DJ from Sweden. But yeah, it's mostly Montreal.
Very cool. And something I wanted to touch on too, because we are representing two different spectrums of radio. One that's maybe a little bit more traditional, so what we would call terrestrial radio, when you turn your FM dial, that's what you can tune into in your car. And then we also have people representing internet radio. And I wanted to ask all of you what your perspective would be on the different freedoms that are permitted by internet radio. So for example, like terrestrial radio, there's a ton of legislative obligations that we have. There's transmission bandwidth that needs to be considered. There's content regulations. So for example, on the station that I broadcast out of, we have to have 30% Canadian content. Whereas, internet stations are not tethered to those same rules. So I'm wondering, how do you think that the two mediums of radio represented here can coexist to support artists? And what are your common goals, and how do we achieve them while existing at the same time? Just because it is very clear that there might be benefits towards one versus the other. For emerging artists who may want to get themselves heard, it might be easier to go into internet radio than it is traditional radio, for example.
Well, in a way, I actually think there's kind of three tiers, if you think about it, because then there's the super mainstream radio, and there's college radio, and then there's the kind of internet community radio. Because like if I just think back in the day, like my dad, they would always try and get him to come to the mainstream radio stations, but then they were like, but you don't get to pick any of the music you play at all, right? And that for him defeated the purpose, so that's why he always stayed with the college radio, Yeah, I feel like, there's different appealing things about all of them. I think one of the cool things about the college radio stations out there, and that I've always really appreciated, is that they're very open to platforming new artists, interviewing new artists. If somebody has a show and they're really excited about an artist, they can just platform them in a way that mainstream radio really would never do, unless like it was like Tate McRae or something. But the community radio, I think, can do that in a lot of ways. Like if you have your own show, you can have another DJ come and do like a guest mix, and there's this kind of cool cross-pollination that can happen with that kind of thing.
I always had this idea of like finding a way to streamline with like all the radio stations in Canada in a way where they can share information and share like what they're playing on a constant basis, and like potentially, you know, having like an award show that celebrates artists, but it's like that award show is a representation of community radio and internet radio. So I think that would be a way to kind of like contribute to the music industry, but also build a nice ecosystem within community radio.
The thing that I love so much about community radio is there's just so much freedom. Like, you can do whatever you want. Like, me and Dora, my friend Dora, were talking the other day, like, we could literally just have a show where we're just like playing field recordings from our phone for an hour. And like, you could never do that on CBC or whatever. So I'm really attracted to the freedom and possibility of not having any rules and legislation over what can be aired.
So I think for me, the biggest difference, because I've worked in both, was really the legislative difference around the two, where if you operate on a frequency, you have to follow the CRTC guidelines of you have to play 33% Canadian content. You know, you have to have so much spoken word content. I don't even remember off the top of my head. What is it, like you have to do your station ID at the top? Is that a CRTC thing, or is that
top of the hour and then in the middle of the hour?
Right. When you're working in online radio, it's kind of like, what do you want to do? Where it's kind of like changed the way I think about it a little bit more, because with all of our DJs, I don't really see why they're not the artist. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, but the Canadian government doesn't really think so. So if we have like over 80% CanCon if you're considering every single time they play a performance. So it is different in that sense, but the legislation has not reached up to, you know, what a lot of the online stations are doing. There is the new Online Streaming Act, but it doesn't really say anything about online radio stations. It's more like bigger corporations like Spotify and YouTube and other Netflix, I guess. I don't know.
I was just thinking, I wanted to come off the point you had, Elise. The terrestrial radio, like CBC, used to actually be a lot more adventurous, where the idea of having just some field recordings on was not totally out of the ordinary. You know, like I think of like Brave New Waves and the kind of, yeah, back in the day they would just have Leonard Cohen just doing poems on the radio or something, and it's like you'd never hear something like this today, I think, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's why I find myself having a lot of gratitude still for being a programmer on a college station, where I feel like, you know, working within these confines, I still have a lot of liberty. Like, for example, I have a show that's afternoons on Fridays, and I know that people are tuned in at that time, driving home from work. Am I still playing, you know, hip-hop fully uncensored? Absolutely, because, I mean, who am I to censor hip-hop artists? Like, it's not for me to make that decision, and I think that the program directors in community stations do find a way to work within these legislative challenges sometimes, and that was something that I thought would be cool to touch on, and it seems like the common goals here are definitely finding ways to strengthen the platforms for emerging artists, but then also maybe challenge the status quo a little bit. And speaking to that, I wanted to ask how the stations that you participated have identified and responded to the needs of communities that often change, and how do you remain relevant in today's media landscape where, you know, you can effectively tune into an app that can create a perfect playlist for you to tune into? What makes people still want to listen to the radio shows that you're involved with?
I can definitely speak to in Toronto with ISO Radio. The thing that I noticed when it really came on the scene, it really filled in a gap that was it was something that wasn't there. Like, I feel like the way maybe in Montreal where there's this community that happens very organically all the time. Like I feel like when I lived there, I'd just be making friends all day and I'd be starting a new band every week or whatever. Like I don't think that happens as easily in Toronto because it's just different vibe. But I found like what they cultivated with ISO radio, it really felt like they were providing a service beyond just being a radio station. Like it was like they would have kind of open decks where you could go and practice and learn. You know, a lot of people who maybe didn't know how to DJ would be like, okay, book your time here and come do that. They'd have these events that were centered around the radio station that, you know, wasn't just about playing on the radio, it was just about cultivating that community. And it was like we're constantly having things that bring people together, like in a physical space, that I've found really inspiring.
Obviously for me is just kind of understanding where the climate of media is right now, so like podcasts, things of that nature. So creating content that the younger generation understands, but bringing it back to radio, you know, cutting up some pieces and turning that into segment. And the other thing we've been doing too is like for example, if we have a host on one of the shows, finding festivals or events that align with their shows and have them like hosting those events as well, so people can not only just hear them on the radio, but see them and feel them. And we've been doing a lot of creative things, like as a radio station, doing marketing for companies that align with our mission as well. And that's our way to kind of show people also like our taste and our personality and like how we view music. Because I find like the way, because I'm an artist, I kind of treat the radio station like an artist. And today as an artist, you can't just put out music. You gotta also know how to brand the music, you know, like tell the story before people hear the music. So that's kind of how I treat the radio. It's like, okay, what can we do to get where the people are at, meet the people where they're at, and then now educate them on radio. So yeah.
That makes me think of how we're seeing more radio hosts online now more than ever. I mean, I've been told, you know, put your face online, make an account for your show, engage with people, and I'm like, people are meant to know what I look like. I've had people recognize me from my voice, and I'm wondering if that's still going to be something that we'll experience in the future, or whether it's going to be, this idea of marketing yourself kind of like an influencer.
I was actually just thinking of what you were talking about, how to grow your station. And you were giving me some ideas just about what you were just saying. It's this idea of what can you cultivate in your particular community, what you're seeing, and it's like you're fulfilling a need for that scene. So it's like, what are people always saying? They're like, oh, there's no stations like this for me to like do like DJ on or something, or there's not enough mid-sized venues, small venues or whatever, or like I'd like to be playing at like a festival that's like outside, but like I can never get booked in these kind of things. So maybe it's like you make the festival. Maybe you find some space outside and like make a thing. And that would be a thing that would bring a lot of attention to the station.
Especially with the cost of renting a venue in Toronto these days. Not that I would want to like focus too much on, like I don't want shows to be online from now on, definitely not, but it is a space for people to play and for people to hear it when there's a huge lack of that, so yeah.
Jake, did you have any thoughts to add on this topic?
Well, the reason I kind of got into community radio from like when I was 16 is I just thought it was cool. And that's kind of it. Like that's all you really need is you just want someone to think it's cool. Like, is Rachel here? Rachel is the head of Debaser, and she used to have a show on CKCU, right? And I remember when she played FetNat for the first time, and I thought that was so cool. I thought it was the coolest 16-year-old. And yeah, so I think that makes it like all worth it, is if you just, you know, I'm still chasing that high. You know? So.
It's true. People on community radio are the coolest. Don't you agree?
I do, Rolly. I do agree. And I think this brings us into a great transition for the next topic, which is intentional programming and listening. You know, what we would, you know, consider to be that high that you're chasing is this human-created feeling. I don't think we can get that from the perfectly crafted playlist. And I wanted to ask all of you, in your opinion, why human-guided curation is still valuable in an age of, well, I mean, complete algorithmic ubiquity. Like, we can have something craft a perfect essay. So why are we still reading books? Why are we still writing poetry? Why do we still listen to community radio when I can type into Spotify, you know, help me find the perfect, like, you know, playlist for me to write this essay to, for example. I'm curious why human-guided curation is still valuable to all of you.
The joy is in the journey. I just spent a couple hours digging for records at the Record Center.
Shout out.
And I found a few amazing records, including like one grail that I've always wanted. And it's just because I spent the time to do it. And I have the physical copy, and it's a higher quality on the record than it would be than the crusty MP3 rips that I've been playing before. But one of the most important things about it is, okay, here's an example. Often you go on Spotify and there'll be a genre playlist that's just totally automated or whatever, and say I'm like, oh, I'm listening to the UK Garage playlist, and there's gonna be a bunch of stuff that's from like Amsterdam. It's like not from the UK, and it's not even the right kind of music either. It's totally wrong, and it's just because the algorithm decided that. But there's a lot of people who aren't going to go and be like, oh, where is each artist from? And so this is actually, I find it very dangerous, where there's going to be this total information gap of a generation of people who didn't do the research at all to be like, what is this music that I'm even listening to? Like, nobody's going to know. It's going to be really weird. So that's why I think it's really important to still just, you know, dig and look for the information yourself and do it kind of the analog way, because through the journey you actually learn about what you're actually listening to.
Absolutely. I feel like I owe so much of my music knowledge to fellow music nerds who spent many hours, countless hours doing research and being generous enough to share it with me through the different radio shows that I listened to over the years. And that's something too that I think is really void in a lot of this like passive listening, is that there's really no curation. We're taking the complete context out of it. What do you guys think?
I had Spotify briefly, and I would try the option where you like this artist, generate me a playlist, and it was never good. It was never good. And I listen to NTS all the time. I love community. I love listening to people's mixes, but there's like no comparison to me. As someone that loves music so much, I got nothing out of it personally. Yeah.
I tried that too. There's like this new thing on Spotify where it's if you give it a prompt, it will make a playlist for you. It's an AI thing, and I tried this, and I was like, okay, how about some Rasta vocals and with UK Garage plus Rasta vocals or whatever, and it was unable to do this. It couldn't find any of the stuff that I was looking for. And the stuff it sent back was so cheesy, so bad, so tacky, tasteless. That's what I think about a lot of the AI stuff. And sorry if there's any AI people in here, but are there any bots out here in the crowd? But I do think it is an affront to good taste often. You know, the result of it. If you look at the art, if you look at what this machine is sending back to me, it's like total crap, in my opinion.
I think the beauty about community radio is that the mission is always to take care of the community. And I think that's what a lot of these other companies are missing, is that like they start off community, and then once the money comes in, their mission starts changing. Because I remember Spotify, like that's how it started. Like my career got made out of Spotify. It was an A&R in Amsterdam that I found before even Canada knew me. Actually flew me out because she loved my song to Amsterdam, and that's how like I made a career out of it. And then now it's AI, But I think it's a beautiful time for community radio because I think with AI and all these things coming, it's people are now looking for storytelling, and AI is not doesn't know how to tell a beautiful story. We do, the people listening do. So I think it's really a good time for people to believe in it, and take the time to tell your story, and you're gonna be able to create like a cult like community.
I believe that music hits different depending on how you received it. I feel like I personally appreciate songs more when they were hard fought for or something, rather than like the passive listening. Like you could just be sitting there all day like listening to all these playlists, and you're not absorbing any of the artists or any of the context around anything you're listening to. You're just like more and more and more, and just keep giving me more content or whatever. Whereas like I feel like when you're intentionally searching and you're like, I'm looking for this kind of thing and from these kinds of artists or whatever, I find it's just like more meaningful.
100%. I'm gonna piggyback off that because I released an album this year, but it was strictly on my website. And what I was doing, I was going to different cities and countries and playing my music, and I sold it for like $35. And the way I saw people treat the music was completely different. And they would listen, when they bought the album, they would listen to a whole album over and over again. And the reason that I did it, because I was like, okay, playlist is cool, like you might have numbers, but I actually don't know who actually likes my music. I don't know, like it doesn't really let me know if I could tour in certain cities, because the numbers are inflated. So I do agree, like the way it's consumed makes a big difference.
And I just want to point out, Spotify, they purposely don't allow us to contact anybody who listens to our music. Anybody who follows us, it is walled garden, that's the tech term. And so we are not able to reach out to these people, but we're supposed to be just happy that they're hearing it.
I didn't know that. That's super interesting. And I will get back to you, I promise. But I'm curious for the artists around the table. How have these platforms affected how people engage with your music, whether it's discovering your music or even just how they interact with it in a live context? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think the thing I've really noticed is before Spotify, I only had a vague idea of what my most popular songs were, but now there's just like empirical evidence of like, okay, everyone likes this song or whatever. And then when I play the shows now, I know they're expecting what the top 10 songs are, and they're hoping to hear all those ones that have been algorithmically decided. So pre-Spotify, I had songs that were more significant in my catalog, and since Spotify, it's like those songs have been replaced with what they've decided are my most significant songs.
I agree with that. Like very well said. And I think the other side of it is, even for me, I don't even think like I appreciated my song as much because I got lazy because the system was like, hey, you make the song and then you just put it on Spotify, Apple, and then you hope that they playlist it, and that's what you're looking for. That's what success is for you. But like this other route, it made me appreciate the music much more, and then I had to get much more creative in terms of my marketing because I had to convince people to want to buy it, So I think it definitely, streaming definitely created a new relationship with people in music, especially in hip hop, and that's why like in this day and age, like hip hop is pretty much on its way down. Well, it's down right now.
Totally is. Totally is. And it's really, Spotify's a big part of this. They have really devalued music,
I don't think any of my listens come from Spotify, to be honest. I think it's all Bandcamp. And like I noticed, my album was called like one of the top electronic albums on Bandcamp in May from Joe Muggs wrote about it. And I sent it to him. And again, so that's like me reaching out to an actual human. And I noticed from that, like my listens went up, but it had nothing to do with algorithms or Spotify at all. It was pure just like real human interaction. So I don't believe in algorithms, if it's not clear.
And I wanted to ask, maybe Jake, you could also speak to this more on the side of programming. Maybe how listening is changing, how the way that people interact with radio is changing.
Well, definitely what Rolly was saying about the devaluing of music and you know, taking more like active listening, and now music is becoming more of like a wallpaper to everyday life when you know, it's coming from a playlist on Spotify. But it also makes me think like someone is writing that algorithm and putting those songs on that playlist, so someone's kind of like telling you what to listen to, but I kind of, maybe just personally, like it's so much cooler when someone's very passionately like nerdy and like just going off about how much they love like a track or something, like maybe like on NTS Flow. Yeah, or like, I don't know if you guys know Hasibic Ball or something. He's one of my favorite radio show hosts of all time. He just won't shut up. Like, it's incredible. He'll just talk and talk and talk about these, you know, old reggae songs, and yeah.
I just want to describe Flo on NTS a little bit. Seems like a really awesome person. She just really has this like kind spirit, and she does the morning show on NTS, and it's all different genres, and it just feels like she has this endless well of music knowledge, but it's not in a pretentious way at all. Like, it's very open-hearted and welcoming, and I'm always like stunned. Like, sometimes there's like tracks that I thought like really like nobody really knows this, and it's like she's played them all. I don't know how this is possible. It's like some of them I look back and I look at the timestamp. It's like, you discovered this song. You were the one. You're the reason I know it. It's crazy.
The thing too about that is I love like finding ways to talk about music too, because if you're just listening to it on a playlist, like you don't really. Maybe you do, but like finding like rhetoric to talk about how to speak about music, and like people like her, like even just what you said about her is like pretty incredible, that like, you know, people can be so passionate and verbalize what they're talking about and nerd out in that way. Yeah.
And you have to give credit to that system to creating the possibility for you to be able to continue to do that in another capacity. Like, I know that for me, programming my community radio show was really my gateway into the music industry, because it wasn't until I learned how to talk about the songs that I cared about so much that I then was able to translate that into writing. And now I find myself, you know, having a journalistic pursuit for music that I wouldn't have previously had if I didn't have the outlet to create this dialogue about it. And I think that's the key piece, is that community radio feels like a dialogue, whereas maybe the passivity of listening sort of feels, like you said, like wallpaper in the background.
And also, I think one of the best things about community radio, those super cool college radio people, is they have expertise, right? And you can like feel it when you're listening, and that's why it was always so exciting when I would go and do interviews when I have a new album out, and I go to talk to all the hip hop people at every station in Canada, and it'd be like, oh, this is the biggest hip hop head in the city, and like they want to talk about my music. You know, it's like, it was always really exciting.
Yeah, I feel like there's something to be said for an exchange that's probably more fulfilling than millions of streams, when you meet that one person in like middle of nowhere Canada that knows everything about you somehow, and they want to talk endlessly about your work. And speaking to this idea of intentionality, just because all of you have had different experiences with community radio, whether it's someone that's interacting with your music or maybe you've gone to do programming yourself. What about that process of like crate digging, for example, or preparing has stood out to you? Like, what's a memory that you have associated with community radio that you think, oh, that's like a real methodology that couldn't be perfected by an algorithm. Like, this is truly a human creation.
I'll say for me, it's on both sides, like, kind of like, sometimes it takes a curator to know who that hometown hero is in that time, and the algorithm can't do that, because a lot of the times it's like someone is regionally popular, but he's not popular in the world, you know? So being able to do that for artists has been great, and then watching them grow after playing them, and then also being on the other side, like following an artist because he's from my city, and then hearing them on the radio, and then watching them grow has been great. So I'll say that's been a great experience for me.
I think one recently was listening to an NTS show that was by Io Edebiri, the actress. And just every song, it was all totally different and really some trippy stuff, some like regular rap, just like it was a combination of things that you wouldn't normally expect. But it was just such a good reflection of her personality and just how I felt about her as a public figure. I was like, man, she's like the coolest person in the world. And this was the soundtrack of the coolest person in the world. Like, I was like, okay, this tracks, you know?
How about you? What do you observe in the internet radio world? How are people discovering music and sharing it in a way that's interesting or inspiring?
Well, for me, it's I really like listening to what the more unpopular shows maybe have to play, like sound art or something, where you're kind of just listening to like a David Tudor piece or something. There used to be a show on NTS that would play like classical music and then like harsh noise back to back, and I really liked shows like that. And I that's not something that would ever be on the new Hot 89.9, obviously. But yeah, finding weird stuff like that where it's like some person's like take on, I don't know, what they get off on, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that answered the question, but
Yeah, to agree with that, like my music taste is very eclectic. I'll listen to classical music and harsh noise back to back, but you would never find that on a Spotify playlist. But my favorite shows are often like one type of music into the other, and then like feeling how that can work. And yeah, I really appreciate that human complexity of enjoyment of music, and just you would obviously never get that from an algorithm.
yeah, AI's Merzbow playlist or something would be sick.
To add to that, I just thought about something, because so I grew up in like lower income environment, and like a year ago, I had a friend that went to jail, and he was saying how CHUO, like community radio, is what they listen to in there, and like that's all they listen to, and when I think about it, the reason they only listen to community radio is because a lot of them can't relate to mainstream. There's no conversation that's happening on mainstream radio that could speak on our life or speak on the the systems that are working against them, and that's where community radio comes to play. And I never and he was just telling me when he was in there, he's like, oh, like my friend runs that radio station. I'm like, and it was nice to know that, like, without knowing, that I'm curating shows and hosts and music that can inspire and help and uplift people to do better. You know what I mean? So yeah.
That's really powerful. And it's true what you say, that community radio is a lifeline for so many and often reflects more closely to home than we might take for granted. And this brings me to what will be our final topic, which is on this note of equitable consumption and distribution, because so much of what is focused on in community radio is so vital to the folks that it represents and serves. I wanted to ask first of why is it so important for music consumers to understand what their actual spending power is, because so many of these stations rely on the goodwill of volunteers or the community to fund it year after year. CHUO, CKCU, for example, relies on community funding to continue to exist. CKCU will celebrate 50 years this year because of the generosity of people in Ottawa and beyond. So why is it important for people to understand what their spending power is and how it can have an influence on their community?
I would say for me, it's like, in Ottawa, does not. If you love media and you love music, there's not that much of a pipeline for you to do too much. So if these outlets are not there for you, then it's gonna go back to like square one, where it's like you have to move to another city in order to apply your talents to whatever you want to do in music or media. So I think that's something I've been educating a lot of, like especially students, and then people that work in the faculties at Ottawa U, because we have a lot of students that learn how to do journalism through our station, built connections and went off to work for labels and stuff like that from our radio stations. So yeah, I think that's something that's important for people to know.
So specifically with Spotify, like we talked a little earlier about the bizarre nature in which the CEO decides to spend his money. And not only do people have spending power, but artists also have labor power in a sense, in which, if workers are making pennies for thousands of streams, then, why wouldn't, workers pull their music off, which they are, people are, but it's just bizarre. I don't know, like.
Yeah, no, totally. Just to jump off of that, like, the whole Spotify thing where they're investing in AI drone technology, hundreds of millions of euros. Once that happened, I already felt bad as an artist paying for Spotify because it's like I don't want to be the architect of my own demise. So I canceled my account, and instead I actually pay for NTS. So I'm, diverted that cash to something that I believe in, want to support, and I think that's something that a lot of the audience has become more familiar with and more mindful of, like what our money is going to. So I feel like what if you have an opportunity to support community radio, you should do it.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world that's so messed up that the music you listen to can somehow be contributing to a war halfway around the world. So I think we don't have. It's easy to feel like we don't have much power in this world, but knowing that where you spend your money does have an effect. It does. I mean, Boiler Room was totally like ruined in Toronto. I don't even know if it happened. Maybe it did, but it was very much like canceled because people were spreading this message of like, don't contribute, don't spend your money on like this because it's contributing to war. So I think just remembering that we do have power in where we spend our money is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone that's in here that might not be I mean, we're all very lucky to have this information, to know, so we're sharing with it as a way of inspiring you to dig deeper, like we all have, which isn't to say if you're using Spotify or your music is on Spotify that we think that you're evil, but it's worthwhile to see in the ways in which that, we're all kind of passively contributing to art washing, and it's happening right in front of us, and we all have the power to pull out of it in one way, shape, or form and show these giant corporations that we won't contribute to it. And so, yeah, whether it's Spotify, whether it's streaming services for TV, there's all a contribution and higher power that, I don't think any of us here really want to be contributing to in any way.
It's even like YouTube Music with the like union busting that they did a couple years ago, where like the workers tried to unionize and then they fired them while they were in front of, I don't remember what it was, like the Senate or something, which was insane. But yeah, it's, I don't know.
I just want to point out that actually divesting totally works. And there's a really vast amount of people and corporations that want you to think it doesn't work, but it absolutely does. And we just saw it with the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing.
Yeah.
That worked amazingly. Like, people were canceling their accounts and they were like, okay, we got to bring this guy back right away. They listen to the people. The Spotify thing too, I've noticed, they're suddenly popping up with all these new features.
Yeah.
That's because people are canceling their accounts and stuff. It's like, we have lossless audio now. We care about that now.
Absolutely.
No, they don't.
Keep protesting. Keep doing it.
And if you're interested in an alternative, there's a great talk that's happening later today with the founder of a platform called Subvert that's actively owned and operated by the artists that contribute to the platform. So if you're looking for a way to listen to music equitably and support artists, you should check that out. It's happening downstairs later today. And to bring things back a little bit, now that we've talked about people understanding their spending power, I also wanted to talk about why music consumers should care about homogenized listening. What's the danger in all of us listening to the same playlists that are, giving us UK garage from Amsterdam, or giving us AI-generated music? What's the danger in that, and why should listeners, like the people sitting in front of us, care?
Picture, if you will, an art gallery filled with AI slop. This is a future without art, right? And this is kind of what's starting to happen with music, and they're making the AI that people don't even notice as AI, and it's just, I don't know. I'm really concerned about like the era of younger people using TikTok and using music as just backing for content creation, where there's not this appreciation of the soulful elements of music and what it can do in your life and what it can mean for you. So I feel like we risk losing part of our souls. Not to be so dramatic, but it's true.
Yeah, and I do think, the more we invest in actual art, it'll push artists to, build true art. Because you find, like streaming, because it was so accessible and everything, people just started rapping out of nowhere, and because they want to be, I guess, millionaires overnight, whereas back in the day, things were more curated and people cared about more things. So when you were working on your craft, you wanted to impress that curator. And I think it would be beautiful if we could take it back to that era.
I've had moments in like a cafe or whatever when I'm hearing music and it's like really trippy. I'm like, is this real or AI? Like you're like, is this like a Radiohead or is this like AI Radiohead? And it's like, it's really bizarre, and I don't know. That's just not a world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where artists are free to be as weird and, expressing their souls as much as possible. So, the way that AI, I guess it homogenizes because it just try to recreate things that have already been created in this very weird way. I don't know. I find it nauseating, to be honest, a lot of AI art.
Well, I think homogeny is bad. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's ever worked in retail before and listened to the same playlist over and over and over again, but that'll make you want to kill yourself. So that's what I got to say.
Period. Well, thank you for those thoughts. And I don't want to leave on too much of a doom and gloom note. So before we get into some questions, and I hope you have some, I'd like to ask for the radio station representatives, what needs to change to keep your stations alive, and or what needs to change to keep them going as they are? And for the artists, I would like to ask, how do the values of community radio influence the future of equitable music consumption? And I know that there are some of you that have dual identity, so answer whichever question speaks to you the most.
I'll say on the radio side, I would say just much more collaboration, and in every way, you know, like if you're an event planner or a creative out there, like as a radio station, we have staff, we have volunteers, so we have a system to, you know, uplift whatever project's out there, and I think coming together will allow the whole ecosystem to go much further.
So for us, I've always had the mentality at Antennas, because it's volunteer radio, you know, people come and people go. I've been there for going on 6 years, and we're going to be 10, which is pretty big for online radio in Canada. And during the pandemic, we were considering closing because it was really difficult. And I've always just had the idea of just like, well, we'll do one more day and see what happens after that. So we'll just keep having one more day until it's the next and the next and the next, and we'll see how long it goes for.
I hate for things to come down to money, but I would say if you can redirect your $10 or whatever a month to community radio or to supporting an artist or something, like I would say do it, because it's hard to sustain this without any funding, which I'm sure most of community radio and like a lot of art is being funded by like $0. So yeah, I would say unfortunately money is a sustaining force in our society.
Absolutely. I mean, CKCU is going to be having its funding drive, which is kicking off in November, kicking off sooner than November. It ends in November. And our goal this year is $193,000. To give you an idea of how much is needed to sustain a radio station that's based on a community, based on a campus, has a staff of 5, that are unfortunately very underpaid staff for the amount of work they do, and about 200 volunteers that come through its doors every day to make it go 24/7, 365. So yeah, money is a very real thing. Absolutely.
I actually think, despite the doom and gloom about AI and everything, that I believe in the future, art made by real people is going to become actually more valuable, and it's going to be bespoke. It's like, wow, that was human made. Nice. And I feel like it's the same with curation, and I feel like community radio, they're going to be some of the most important curators, and it's already become so hard for an artist to get press or get to do interviews or get platformed by anywhere unless you have a huge audience of your own. So it's really important to still have places like college radio stations where people really just care about things, or community radio where they just care about an artist, and as one individual can make a choice to platform an artist that maybe no one's ever heard of before. And I think there's just something really beautiful in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not an artist that gets played on community radio, but I've had the extremely humbling experience of interviewing many artists over the years, and a lot of people have said to me, hey, because of that interview that we did, I got another interview, and then I was able to play a show, and now I'm releasing my second album. So you're able to see that through line and see how much of a contribution it makes. And I can tell you right now that it's probably one of the most amazing experiences that you can have as a music fan, to say that you played a small part in someone's career taking off, whether they're playing shows locally or, you know, getting to tour for the first time. It's really special. So yeah, not so doom and gloom for sure. So that concludes all of our questions, and now we can turn the microphone over to you if you have any questions for any of the folks around, I almost said around the table, but around this semicircle here with me. And thank you all for being so attentive. I feel like I haven't heard a single like sigh or seen a single eye roll, so I appreciate everyone for listening so attentively. Thanks.
Big up to Zoe as well for holding it down.
Yes.
There are also some cool artists up here, so we will accept fan questions too, if that's more your style.
And me too.
So just going back to that sort of like three-part design of like, you know, commercial radio, campus, college, and then online. It strikes me as like each one is guided by the capital it can get. So like Chorus owns everyone up here. Campus community has its like own sort of unsustainable but sustainable model, as you say, like underpaid, but it's very geographic based. And internet radio is very like the cost of doing it is low, but as you talked about, you're like representing a community. I'm just wondering if like, especially for the internet radio folks, especially sort of N10, Jacob, who's been around longer, as you're thinking about what you need to be sustainable, have you received like offers for external capital? And how do you think about that? I don't know if you have received that as well, Elise. But like that sort of thing where like the internet radio stations are commodifying like a scene and a community, and then like you need capital to survive. I just wonder how you think about it.
So we have had some people come to us and offered us money to do stuff. Most of the time, if we reach out to people, they actually don't want to give us money, believe it or not. But we've come close with people, and they end up wanting us to do like really corny stuff. So we've had to say no to like PBR because they wanted like the hosts to like pose with the can, which we were like, no. But it's really nice to be able to say no. Like if you don't want to do it, if you're like, no, this is kind of selling out.
Can I follow up with like, for y'all are NTS fans, when they took capital from UMG, what was the feeling among so NTS took
Heartbreaking.
money, like a significant amount of capital from Universal Music Group, the biggest label in the world, and some debt financing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a bummer, right? But it's, for something on that scale, you can see why they would be interested in doing that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's the same thing with like they've managed to, keep their like grassroots kind of
For
style.
now.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Bandcamp, right? Like,
Oh, well, the Bandcamp one
Bandcamp
was
and-
so bad. That was
it's like Epic Games, seriously.
yeah, the Epic Games, and then they got bought by Song Tradar.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of just doesn't hit the same, does it? They got rid of the entire editorial staff, which was one of the best things about Bandcamp at the time. But the NTS one, yes, that's really interesting to me because NTS, they do a lot of brand collabs, and they're not shy about it, and they get their DJs to do them and stuff, and it could be a little icky, but they do it pretty tastefully, I think.
NTS so cool though.
All the stuff, because all the stuff is totally cool. It looks cool and it's curated really well, but they still did they're like 51% owned by Universal Music Group now.
Yeah, totally.
Stay tuned for the Bieber radio show or whatever, you know, like, yeah.
Hi. So we've been talking a lot about music and kind of the power and influence it can have. I was wondering, this is a question for everybody. Was there a particular artist, album, song, radio, show, anything that you think either inspired you and kind of got you to where you are today, or that you just really like and recommend to other people a lot?
You can listen to Also Cool on Antennas and First Crush.
That's very kind, thank you.
I really enjoy a lot of the mixes that were on NTS of Theo Parrish. I'm a really big fan of him. I've seen him DJ like 6 times. And it's just one of those things that really redefines what sharing music like really means or whatever. Like I find it very spiritual what he does.
Yeah, you can just go through NTS and like find whatever you've ever wanted to listen to on there forever. Like Jordy Griep has a show on there that's like so random. He'll play like some bossa nova song, some Frank Sinatra, and then like I don't know, Frank Zappa, like all back to back, which I really love.
The theme is Frank. If I can be really candid for a sec, because I'm kind of a community radio Nepo baby. My dad is the production manager at CKCU-FM. So like I mentioned earlier in the talk, my start in community radio was really young. Was it my choice? TBD. But I'm really grateful for it, and I actually really do love listening to my dad's show. We now gratefully are back to back, and are our styles complementary? Absolutely not. But I think it was because of growing up in a space where sky was the limit in terms of taste from both of my parents, but I would say especially my dad, that I really learned to be able to, I guess, like challenge my own ideas of certain music and certain kinds of music and whether or not I could belong in those scenes. Like, you know, for example, my dad has been known to play high-powered machinery sounds on his radio show, and, you know, now plays like SoundCloud rap, for example, but all kinds of music. So when I was really young growing up, my first introduction to going to shows was actually hardcore shows, and I feel like you probably wouldn't expect to see like a little blonde girl at a hardcore show, but it was because of people like my dad and people in community radio saying, this is for everyone, anybody can listen to this, and it's made by real people, that I questioned less about how I could belong and just had that curiosity to see how things happen behind the scenes. And yeah, it was very cool to have that experience. There's also a great show called Heavy Friends on CKCU on Saturday nights, and I mean, there's gatekeeping and then there's the opposite, which is what they're doing. So if you want to go into a deep dive of any possible kind of music, I would say that's your best bet. And they've really inspired me to, yeah, I guess get really nerdy with it. Like on my show, I definitely do themes, but I've been inspired to do a little bit more digging like they do, and also maybe get a little bit more creative with my curation, which has been really important, because you get into your niche and then sometimes you question whether or not something can fit, but like you're steering the ship, so it fits if you want it to.
I'm kind of biased. It's this show called Rockers that we have on Saturday. It's this host named Papa Richie. He plays reggae. He's been doing it for 20 plus years, and like the whole Caribbean community in Ottawa like still listens to him. Like people fight for ad spots all the time, and it was actually nice. Like a couple of weeks ago, like I was able to get him like an interview with this like dream artist from Jamaica, this artist named Cranium. So like it was nice for me to do that for him. But yeah, I would say that he's like one of those radio hosts that really kind of, you know, opened my eyes and my mind up to community radio.
I can't remember the name of the show right now, but there's there was this show on CIUT, Toronto U of T radio station that was jungle and like drum and bass. I think it still happens. I wish I could remember the name right now, but I remember like driving around when I was younger and like hearing that for the first time, and just like how much hearing these like new sounds affected me so much. Other than that, Fractal Meat on a Spongy Bone on NTS is one of my favorite shows. Highly recommend it.
I see there's another hand, and I'm not ignoring you, so it's your time. Yes, you.
Hello. So I'm kind of curious. I don't know, like, this question may be a little, like, I don't know. But I'm kind of curious, like, what's, especially in terms of internet radio, like, what's the difference between internet radio and, like, a podcast? In the sense that, like, so here in Ottawa, like, there's an organization, like, or collective, Passive Lives, and I've been really thinking that I, like, would love to start a radio where, like, we bring in, like, different artists or DJs just to play, like, different music and stuff like that. I mean, like, I know, like, philosophically they're different in the sense that, like, a podcast is, like, talking about a topic and a radio is, like, music and maybe talking about the music, but, like, yeah, like, I don't know, like, especially in terms of, like, hosting platforms, like, I know people do host things on Mixcloud and, like, on SoundCloud, but I know also, like, sometimes people host, like, podcasts or, like, just things that, you know, talking about special interests and stuff on them. So I'm kind of, like, intrigued, like, how do you differentiate, like, what internet radio is based in, like, on the internet, and, like, what, like, something in that larger realm of, like, podcast?
That's a great question. Thank you.
I don't know if this is the right answer, but this is my answer. I think it's going back to what Cadence Weapons was saying. To me, it's like the branding of it. How do you want the people to consume the material that you want to put out there? Because if you say internet radio, they might receive the music or the spoken word differently. If you say podcast, they might expect something differently. So I would say that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, I think internet radio, like the way I think of it is, it's like a DJ mix, and you can sometimes listen to it live, like it's like for the broadcast for the first time, whereas usually a podcast will be a pre-recorded thing that's just posted and it's up. And also, it's very rare, I find, to find podcasts that are all just someone DJing. Like it's usually interviews or like talking. Though I do listen to the Resident Advisor podcast a lot.
I feel like it's how the thing exists in relation to other things, if that makes sense. Like, if I'm picturing an internet radio station, I can hover around and discover different shows that all have this common thread with each other and that they're programming a radio show, whereas a podcast is kind of a standalone entity. So I guess to answer your question, the way I think of it is like every internet radio show on its own could be a podcast, but not every podcast could be an internet radio show, if that makes sense. So I kind of think of it as the way that it relates to others, like the way that two shows can complement each other, whereas not every podcast complements each other. It's kind of like the library versus the section of particular books, if that makes sense, or the subject matter. But it's a really good question, and I feel like probably deserves a more complex answer than that.
I think that's a good answer, though.
I see we have two questions. I did see your hand go up first, if you'd like to ask your question.
I have a question about discovery and curation, and like I feel like it's kind of a hipster trope that like you want to be like the first one to discover an artist or a type of music or whatever, and then tell all your friends about it, or like kind of keep it for yourself and not share it, or just like stake your claim to it. But also how that is such like a colonizing kind of behavior. So I guess I just like wonder how you feel about, as curators, about facilitating discovery and like how you kind of nurture those artists and aren't like, yeah, how do you resist that kind of like colonial urge to like stake your claim to something and be the first one there and like be the, you know, the one to tell all your friends about it?
Sharing is fun.
I think music is meant to be shared, and I don't think it's meant to be hidden away and gate kept and all that. You know, no gatekeeping over here.
I think this is related, but I was recently asked to do a mix for Antennas Radio for Pique, and I had the thought like, oh, I could try to choose all like my favorite music, all like the weird, obscure stuff that I love from around the world, but I decided to do the whole mix of artists from Toronto, all friends, and I don't know, I felt like that was kind of, I guess, I don't know if anti-colonialist is the word, but I felt proud of myself to have decided to just like showcase the people around me that I want to like raise their voice versus like trying to choose what is necessarily like the coolest music.
Right now we're supporting these two hosts from Ottawa that their niche thing is that they find underground hip hop artists in Japan and do like a full like breakdown like about their music, and they're like now like blowing up on YouTube. And what that has done has actually created features between artists in Ottawa and artists in Japan, and that's just them being from here, breaking down music from there, and they're like, oh, that's cool. Like people from Ottawa are breaking down our music better than people here, and then now that creates an ecosystem where it's like, okay, now it's making the world smaller, and now people can share music from here to over there, and vice versa. So I think, I think sharing music is very important, and it makes the world a better place, honestly.
That's really cool. What's the name of the show?
It's called Nihon Rush Hour.
Very cool. To answer your question, I feel like when I meditate on the reasons why music scenes exist, it is this idea to actively subvert oppression, to actively subvert being challenged, and people are only as powerful as they can be when they're together. And so when I think about having the ability to have a voice that I can share, it's best to bring people's attention to other causes, to other people's artwork. It's a really lucky position that we have to be able to share the music that we love so much in the way that we do. So I feel like we almost owe it to the scenes that we belong in to continue encouraging that reciprocity, because else they wouldn't exist. And to speak to the idea of discovery, I mean, I'd be amazed if I could discover an artist that someone had never heard before, to be honest, because I feel like sometimes I'm finding myself in music silos and trying to actively challenge that. But what I'm getting to is this idea that, like, if I was to hear an artist that I thought for the first time, and if I was really excited about it, I would only want there to be another fan to talk about it with, or another person that I could share that with. So when I found it also cool, we really tried to get behind what I think true journalistic practices in music, which is letting artists tell their own stories in the way that feels representative to them, rather than basing it on how marketable their story is. So we really just try to act as players in the background and provide this platform. So I feel the same about my radio show. It's really up to the artists to tell their stories. And I mean, I feel lucky that they come to me to be able to use that space. But yeah, it all comes back to like, why do music scenes exist, and how do we riff off of each other to keep them going? So it's a great question, thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. I saw that you had your hand up.
I have a question about internet radio and your relationship to liveness. So like what antennas, or like while you're doing your programming, what's the place that you give to live webcasts or broadcasts and to reruns, how you build to continuous programming 24 hours, or so what's the relationship you have with liveness when you're on the internet versus terrestrial radio?
I don't really know if there's much of a difference with terrestrial radio and online radio in that sense. Really, for us, it's more of we can only accommodate so much live broadcasting because we need volunteers to come into the station and kind of oversee what's going on. Though at one point we did try a model where, everyone had keys to the lot box, but it became a issue of insurance. It's just the boring logistics of stuff gets in the way. Yeah, sorry if that's not a very fun answer.
No, it's very pragmatic.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're getting at, because the idea of someone going in a like, in theory, it's kind of the same. Like, it's someone going into a room and you're pressing a button and like, whoa, you're there. But I guess there is this sense of like, you can tune into terrestrial radio from multiple cars at once. And so now I think people are tapping into the idea that we can all go on a website and tune in, right? Like, it's almost like we're learning to do this thing again for the first time. And maybe that's not built into how we interact with websites necessarily. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the only time I do that is maybe when there's like something streaming on YouTube, like, this is boring, but like a city council meeting, and I'm like, it's live now. But we don't really think of that maybe in like a listening format. So I think that's interesting. What you're getting onto is this like,
or it's maybe a question of scaling. I mean, NPS,
Yeah.
you'll hear people actually engaging online while there's like the morning show. People tune in because it's a really popular thing. But like when it's grassroots or on a smaller scale, you still have that kind of engagement and relationship with the audience as internet radio chat.
Yeah, we have a chat. Chat can be dangerous sometimes. Kids get on there and say messed up stuff, and we have to ban them. But I feel like it's a much bigger thing for like online radio stations that have like the visual aspect to it as well. Like
the lot radio.
Or
Yeah,
or,
I've done the lot radio before.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty cool.
The chat is very fun when you're in there because it's like lots of people are in there. It's like a party in the chat.
Yeah.
I kind of hate the idea of someone watching me doing my radio show, to be honest. Like, I don't want people to know what I look like when I'm really focused on mixing a song, because I probably look ugly and I don't want people to see that.
I noticed that was when I learned I have a DJ face.
I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to this, but do you have a chat on your site? Okay. Is it something you're interested in, or are you going to go chat free?
No, I would love that. When I had the stream on Antennas Radio, the chat was so much fun. Yeah, so I chatted. It's great.
We're pro chat. There's a comment section on CKCU, so you can leave a live comment, and then you can put like a little tag of who it is. So I get some fun ones. I like it. I also do like it when people call in, even though obviously the phone doesn't ring because that would be interruptive, but there's a light that flashes, so you kind of get this like strobe at you while you're trying to mix, which is almost worse. But I do like it when people phone in, it's fun. Can you phone in to Antennas or Borscht? Do you have a phone or no?
No, I would love to have a phone, but that's extra money, which we don't have. So yeah, having a phone would be super funny.
You might have
if
just
anyone
created...
wants to pay for a phone plan.
Gotta get that landline.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Well, thank you so much again, everyone, for your attentive listening, and hopefully you've learned something cool about community radio, or you're a new fan. And like I said, there's another talk that's happening later with the founder of Subvert that's happening in Art Engine. So if you're interested in how you can contribute your dollars and cents to artists in a meaningful way through an alternative, I'd recommend checking that out. I forget the time that it's on. It's a little bit later, so if you're like tired of dancing and you want to sit, you can do that. Oh wait, did you say the time, Maeve? 9 p.m. Art Engine, first floor.
I want to put something out there real quick. I am working on this app where basically people will be able to support artists. Kind of like crowdfunding, but also like have shares in the project that they're investing in. So once that's ready, if you want to support, please do.